With a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:32 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee with an agenda that was posted more than 24 hours in advance on the SAU41.org website and at the SAU office, Hollis Brookline Middle School and Hollis Brookline High School. I'd like to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the Budget Committee members who are present for tonight's meeting, which are Dave Blinn, Tom Enright, Brian Rader, Raul Blanchet, and Matt McGuire. Lauren Ridstrom has an excused absence for this evening, as does Cindy Van Conant. I would like to also introduce B.A. Kelly Seeley, who's with us this evening, and School Board Member Krista Whalen, who is participating as a substitute for Cindy, but not as a voting member this evening because she has not yet been designated as an official alternate. But she was kind enough to spend some time with us to give us an update later in the meeting. So if you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'd like at this point to ask if there are any agenda adjustments. I would just like to clarify that two of the points later in the agenda are review of, I believe I had the FY19 budget process, that should be FY20, and a preliminary, I had FY20 budget overview, it should actually be a budget, FY21 budget overview. But other than that, I don't have any other changes to the agenda, and I'd be happy to entertain anybody's request for change.
You did have a review of the district meeting.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have
thank you.
review of the budget process and meeting results, yep.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
thanks.
Sure. So, as appointment of meeting observer, I have as Raul. I started again. I lost track of where we were, so I just alphabetically ran through the list. I have to go back. I think at the time I did this, I didn't know Cindy was going to be our representative, so I'll add Cindy and make some modifications. The next item on our list is a reorganization. It's the first thing that occurs because as soon as the annual meeting ends and the election results are finalized, no one has positions in their boards anymore, and we go through the process of reorganizing on this board for the seats of chair, vice chair, and secretary. So at this time, I will entertain nominations for the chairman's position.
I make a nomination for you to be the chair of the budget committee moving forward, as we've done
Second.
successfully.
Third.
Okay. If there's any, do we do discussion?
I would fourth it, but I can't.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of electing me as chair?
Aye.
People abstain, but I always just like vote for myself anyway, so, thank you. 0-0. It's unanimous. Thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate you bringing that forward on I'm not sure how many years, but I enjoy the role, happy to help and move things along, so I do really sincerely appreciate it.
I think you're superb.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion for the vice chair.
Raul?
Okay, Tom's nominating Raul as vice
Second.
chair, with Brian
No third?
seconding. I'll third it. Any other nominations or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Raul as vice chair? Noes, abstentions? It's unanimous again. Great. Love it.
Thank you.
And this one's always a favorite, the perennial favorite for secretary.
I'll nominate Matt for secretary.
I'll have to ask Matt if he wants to accept it. If you would be so kind, I do.
Sure.
Okay, great. That would be great. You do a great job with them. I know you're busy as chairman of the other board, but I do appreciate it. Any other nominations? Seeing none at this time, all those in favor of Matt for secretary? It's unanimous again. Great, I love it. That's a great way to start the year.
Again.
Fantastic. So next, We have, I believe it's 3 sets of minutes for approval. We have the minutes of the regular meeting of January 24th. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes. I'm not, were they amended at some, they were
yeah, they
probably
went
amended
through,
at some
yes.
point, so as amended.
Yeah.
Dave, so 124 minutes. Dave, second. No. Questions, concerns, comments, or amendments? Let's just see if everybody was here. Raul, Matt, Tom, Brian, yes. And myself. Great. All those in favor of the minutes from the 24th as written? Great. Opposed? Seeing none. 600. Okay. We have the minutes of the public hearing from February 21st. Was that late, our public hearing?
No.
No. You know what? I think,
We have to
Did you-
rethink our vote.
did you do public hearing
No,
minutes?
Dawn.
No, we had to undo them.
All right, these actually,
Is that the joint meeting with
It
the
was
school
like
board?
the 6th.
Yeah, it was
I've got-
early.
I've got
That was
February
like the
6th.
5th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 6th. yeah.
all right, these are,
Actually, she got the
Did he-
21st.
oh, no, these are meeting minutes from a public hearing from the petition articles. So at the next meeting,
yes.
I pulled and distributed the wrong public hearing minutes. So we'll go back and approve those at our next meeting. I said public hearing, and just what that was. Okay, and our next set of minutes were from March 6th. This was the meeting before the actual district meeting where we took positions on the
Oh, the petition.
petition articles. So I believe,
Yeah, I sent an update out right before I left to drive here.
okay, so what we could do is, I'll entertain a motion to accept the March 6th minutes as amended
Make a motion to accept the meetings as amended.
from Raul, seconded by Brian. And if you could just talk us through the changes?
Just to clarify language a little bit and
Okay.
forget what else. There's very minor.
Yeah, it's like some minor rewording. I
Right.
could pull them up if you want to. So. If I still have it on my computer.
Yeah, the version with track changes.
Maybe. It's not this one. I'm not online, so I can't pull it up.
Okay. So if they were just
yeah.
minor,
I'll show you both of them.
kind of typographical things, we can
Right.
accept those. Okay. We're all good with it.
Just a question for future reference on meeting minutes like that. When there is a voting and the voting changes from one article to the next, do we need to identify the names of people and how they voted?
No, we typically only mention or include the names of those who've abstained.
Okay?
I think some boards have listed names of those who vote against. But we adopted the to list those who abstained. I could do a little research on if there are certain requirements for that, but that's how we've left it.
I mean, this is fine the way
For
it is,
now.
but I wasn't sure
Mhm.
if there is some
So
guidance.
I think we had, so maybe on the motion failed 152 on SB2, if we could just identify that I think it was Raul and John who abstained. And on tax impacts posted on the warrant.
I abstained on that one.
Brian, you abstained on that. So if you could clarify that, that would be great. Okay? Okay. So with those amendments, I'll take a motion to accept the March 6th minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
I think
The March
we
6th
already
minutes
brought it
as
to,
amended.
oh, actually, as amended, we already brought it to the floor as amended, as re-amended, because I made
Yeah.
that change. Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? You were there. It was at the March 6th meeting. It was right before the town meeting, 600.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you were there. You were an active participant.
Doing well.
Great. The next item I have is a financial update. So Kelly, I sent this to me last week, and it was included with the final agenda that went out very late yesterday, which I apologize for. I actually thought I had sent it out on Friday when I notified this SAU office, and then realized I had not sent it out. So my apologies for getting that out so late. So Kelly, if you wouldn't mind just kind of walking us through where we stand.
Sure, no problem. As far as the expenses go, each category is pretty much holding its own with the exception of benefits. And if you recall, that negative number is primarily due to our current staff taking, going from like a single to a two-person or a two-person to a family or whatever combination we've seen a lot of staff go higher plans. And we've also seen a number of more maternities this year as well. So this year and next year together, we'll probably see more of those changes come up.
So the current health census that we have now is what we use to do
Yes.
FY20? We didn't make
Yes.
any modifications for those known maternity leave? Well, I guess some of them might be
Yeah,
family
we didn't know
or
at the
not.
time of the
Yeah.
budget, we really didn't know
Okay.
a lot of them. So those are more recent developments. And then as far as regular education, we're not seeing as many lane changes as the staff had indicated previously, and we are seeing changes in circumstance with special education, several scenarios there that are allowing us a little extra money in those lines. As far as revenue goes, our impact fees were higher than expected. That's revenue that comes to us. And also we've received in the category of other, local other, $60,000 you would see down there at the bottom is due to a workers' comp premium holiday that we got from Primex. So we are enjoying those things for sure, because as a result, the revenue and expense overages, or underages, I should say, for expense, are resulting in us being able to cover all of our trust costs for FY20, as well as the retained fund balance that we normally, the $142,000 that we normally put forward. And at this moment in time, in this snapshot, we can return $50,000 to the taxpayers.
So if we remember from prior versions of this, of the results, we were not going to be able to cover, some of this was brought up at March meeting.
Right.
We did not anticipate being able to cover some of those additional trusts, the contingency, and I don't think we ever made it to the retained fund balance at that
No,
point.
I think we
So-
were able to cover like part of the special ed trust and then
Right.
not at all.
Yeah, so I appreciate the time and effort that goes into those encumbrances, because I know that there are a lot of things that change
Oh, yes,
um,
definitely.
month to month, so it's nice to see
Question?
that we'll be able to return
On this
something.
report, are they in the same order as they appear in the warrant
Yes,
articles?
they are. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. So we're in a much better position right now. Hopefully that will get better.
Because I think what we were hoping for, I think it was $200,000 being
Yes,
returned.
that's what we have indicated in the paperwork to the DRA.
Yes, so, and we still have, this is the beginning of March, or this was basically
The end of March.
end of
yeah.
March. Okay, so this was before March even closed.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question. Are you seeing any reductions in cost in the special ed balance as a result of the decisions we made before regarding transportation? Like,
Using the van and
using the
things like that?
van and,
Oh, I don't have any numbers to put forward on that, but absolutely, that van is well used and used for really good purposes, for the life skills program mostly. So we've completely cut that out of the budget in terms of outsourcing it.
I mean, at some point, I mean, this sounds like a success story. It might be useful to obtain some of the specific data behind it and show it as a
Sure.
thinking differently
Sure, let
to
me,
help save resources.
let me
Good
get
point.
that for you.
Yeah.
Maybe obtain some feedback, maybe 2 or 3 months from now, you know. instead of
Okay,
right away, whatever.
yeah, I can put together
I think we
some,
need to start where we can find stories like that. We need to document them for the record.
that's a
because
great idea.
That's a way to educate the public.
Sure.
So one of the topics that I brought forward because of some questions that were brought up outside of this meeting, and I shared with Andy, were with regard to the athletic field. So this kind of crosses the financial update with the school board update, because some of the questions that were brought up regarded some of the financial impacts and things like that. So I did send out the questions and the responses that I got from Andy. I'm not sure who may or may not have seen them yet, so I printed them out. In case you haven't had a chance to see them. So these kind of came up as a result of, I think Crystal's all set.
I have.
So these kind of came up as a result of some of the articles and meeting minutes that have been published as the athletic turf field process has been getting underway. Not sure, so there have been planning board minutes and newspaper articles, and so I think some of the questions can just kind of address and answer some of the things that have been put out there and kind of get firsthand input on where we stand with the field. So there were some financial concerns with if there were any requirements of the planning board or the Department of Environmental Services. How did that impact the planning? Do we have hard costs for the field itself and things like that? So Andy responded to the questions, and I said that maybe it was kind of since some of the details are still being worked on, maybe May would be a better time where he would be available to come and meet with us and give us some more information. So Krista, I don't know if you want to jump in with where the board is, or if you don't mind me going through the summary of responses, or how you want to.
He answered it well. I mean, if you would,
Okay.
go ahead. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it as
Yeah.
well and go into
Okay, so the turf field came
If
before
you
the.
want to ask me the questions, I can answer them. I didn't know if you wanted me to go through.
No problem. And by the way, Krista's here this evening, as I mentioned earlier. While she's not the designated alternate for the school board, she's here tonight because Cindy, who is our budget committee person, was not available. So knowing that these questions had come up, the board wanted to have a representative here to just, again, answer any questions that we have. So the plan for the turf field went before the planning board. It is, at this point, because of the location of the schools and the fact that it's a government entity, the planning board does not have to approve the plan. But the districts, when they have additions and renovation plans and things like that, go before the planning board and the zoning board if necessary to gain input, share, listen to concerns, but the planning board does not have to take an active vote on approving or not approving our plan. So with that said, there were some concerns and questions that were brought forward by the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board with regard to an easement across the property, potential drainage issues because the property itself abuts Beaver Brook, and I think maybe some other, minor things along the way. And as a result, Andy met with the Conservation Commission during the beginning of the March meeting. There was a Conservation Commission meeting planned. He left the March meeting to attend and address their concerns. And based on Andy's response, sent some kind of clarifying plans to the Department of Environmental Services. And I believe they're set with an alternate plan so that drainage is going to drain to the north instead of what it was going to be before, with a very minimal dollar value impact of, I think, $3,800 at this point, probably just to redraw plans and things like that.
There was another issue of potential trash.
Yes, so concern, I think, by the abutter of remaining trash and things like that. And that's going to just be addressed, I assume, by our custodial staff, but also as an opportunity for our students to have ownership of the property,
Right.
work, and have some like honor society hours or part of their commitment to the sports teams and things like that, that they be involved in maintaining certain aspects like trash or things that are, around the field. The item of note, I think, at the end of Andy's comments is that there's now a 10-member facilities committee to oversee the project, to authorize a project manager. I think it's really great that Cindy is going to be the board representative to that committee, so she'll be able, obviously, to give us, a firsthand update on how things are proceeding, and that they do not yet have the final plans with financial commitments and things like that yet.
We're just waiting for all the things to come in so that we can have those, so we can move forward. And then the project manager of the committee will work to get a project manager, and the project manager will work with the committee to get the RFPs and move forward.
Mm-hmm. Some of the other questions that came up were with regard to the donations. And so I think as a committee, I would really like to see like a hard document.
Requirement.
Or a hard, no, a document, well, I think, a couple of things. I'd like to meet with someone from HB Elevates. I didn't ask Andy the composition of the board, but I would like to know, who those members are.
Tom Solon is going to be on it from the board. It
Okay.
usually is the chair.
Okay.
But Holly Babcock was elected chair, and her husband is the treasurer on the committee.
Oh,
So
okay.
she abstained from
Yeah.
that position, and Tom Solon is going to be our representative
Okay, great.
on HB Elevates.
So I can send a note to Tom and I actually would like to invite him and any other members of HB Elevates that are available or would like to participate to just hear kind of firsthand what some of their plans are and really understand the donations we received to date. I asked generally, did they come with any contingencies? Like, did someone say, I'll donate $50,000, but it's for lights, or I'll donate X because it's for bleachers, or things like that? Or was it just a blanket donation for the turf field? So the response was that they're all just general donations for the field, but I would think it is incumbent upon us to at least ask the question of kind of what is the list, what is the goal, and how we're working toward that goal. The specific question was, what's the time frame for taking those donations and applying them to prepayments, because that was a major part of the financing arrangement, and that I think is still kind of a TBD as plans evolve and develop and donations come in and things like that. But those are the types of things that we're going to be interested in going forward. So I think there are definitely more details to come, and I think for right now this is a great summary of where we are to date. So I don't know if anyone else has any
Are there any
questions.
You think this is a good summary?
Yeah,
Oh, well then let me ask questions.
sure, please do.
Well, I didn't see any specific answers to the DES wetlands questions. Andy says everything's progressing well. I'd like a little bit more detail than that.
Okay,
I think you will know in May better, but I mean, it is progressing. Ty and Bond does not see anything stopping, where it's basically at the state level waiting for their approval.
So Beaver Brook hasn't, you hear things, and
Right.
you hear that there are drainage issues. and drainage issues heading toward Beaver Brook. Is that an issue?
We
And have
changed
they?
that to the $3,800. They moved the drainage, so it goes
North now.
north now as opposed to west.
Okay, so
And-
Beaver Brook is not concerned at this
No.
point?
There
Not
were-
about the
From reading what Andy wrote, there seemed to be two issues they were concerned about. One of them was the drainage, the other one is the potential garbage issue, or potential trash that may find its way into Beaver Brook area. I thought that was a,
But there's also, I forgot to mention, there's an easement
Yeah,
question, a right-of-way issue, and we can talk about that. And you mentioned waiting for DES approval.
Well, the permits.
Okay,
The
so
permits.
that's how we have to,
Yes.
okay.
so the Conservation Commission isn't objecting to this at this point?
Not as far as I understand, no.
Because we
They-
rerouted the drainage.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
The district.
I believe that
Well,
rerouted.
good,
was the
so,
concern.
so
I don't
the
know-
so-called wetlands issues have calmed
subsided.
down, subsided.
Yeah.
Okay, good, well, I'm
I
sorry.
believe, according to Andy and Andy being at the meetings, that's the information I have received.
Okay, thank you.
The other issue that I had was regarding the potential donations. Is there any way to earmark them to reduce debt rather than for anything else? And is that something we can have some influence on?
I
words.
believe we can put forward an opinion of the Budget Committee that says something to the effect of, we would, based on what the financing arrangement was, we would expect any and all donations to go toward, unless they're specifically designated to something else, maybe, up to a certain amount, or up to a certain amount annually, or, initial donations would be going to offset.
So would you expect that maybe
Principal
at the
and
next
things like
meeting
that.
we'll take,
Well, and that's
we'll
why
have
we
a
need
discussion,
we
take
need,
such a vote?
I think that's why we need more details
Yeah.
around specifically what level of dollar donations do we have right now? What's the plan through HB Elevates? Is there an active development plan that has members of HB Elevates pursuing donations, or are we just kind of waiting for them to come in, just kind of understanding how that
Mhm.
is going to proceed? But yeah, I think as a budget committee, we can certainly put forward a recommendation of how we would,
Use
as a
donation
committee,
money?
use
Yeah.
the donation
Well, I believe that,
to see it used.
I don't know about money personally, but like the Booster Club was going to donate money, but they wanted to donate it
Right.
towards stands, towards bleachers.
Yeah.
Right, and then,
So-
fine, and if it's donated and then absolutely that's where it goes. So, but for the ones that are donated
Right,
in general, is it our opinion that anything donated in general only goes to bond prepayment or toward the bond payment itself? So there are two ways to look at it. You could look at it as a prepayment on our regular $200,000. We have a regular $200,000 payment, and then we can pay that through the budget and then take the donations and prepay. Or do we offset, from a tax impact perspective, say, well, how about if we use the donations to make the bond payment? Things like that. Those are all kind of legitimate conversations, and I think we can.
Conversations that we haven't had yet. correct?
Exactly.
Right.
That we
Okay.
need to have. Yes, that we need
Yeah,
to
that's fine.
have.
It
Yeah.
sort of was starting to sound like we had conversations.
No.
No, no.
Okay.
No, I was just saying that we could put forward, any of these as options, but obviously need to.
Well, I'm
Okay.
hoping that
Kinda
we'll, maybe
understand.
at the next meeting, when Andy
Yes.
comes back with additional information, we can in turn have this discussion.
And
Fine.
I would like to invite HB Elevates to the May meeting as well, so that we hear field planning issues, costs, and things like that, and we hear the donation side as well.
Has
Fine.
there been any talk from potential donors that they don't want it isolated to what it specifically is for?
Well, if they just make a general donation that say this is for the field, then it's for the field.
For the field or to pay it back to field really? The bond?
They could if you make a donation, you can stipulate it any way you want.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know that,
Yeah.
I don't think there have been, I think Andy's answer was there were no contingencies placed on any of the donations received to date. Okay, so,
This is still very fluid, though.
Yeah, fluid isn't the word.
Thank you. Much more clear to me now
okay,
than this letter.
okay, good.
Fluid like a
Well, and I think Andy provided kind of summary information in the hopes of coming in May and giving more details. That's how
Okay,
how read and
I got it
interpreted
now.
this.
The reason I made that comment of fluidity is because people were not committing to donate until it passed. Now that it passed, Now they're probably they're gonna be committing to donate funds, but some of them may prefer to earmark it and others may not. So
Right.
either way, they're accepted, but at least, we should at least be on record that as much money as possible should go back to paying for the debt.
Yeah.
Holly's husband's name is John. Okay. So Krista, you also mentioned, are we all set on this? Looking forward to a nice, good discussion in May. Okay. Krista, you had mentioned that Holly's the new chair, and
Holly's
as
the
a
new
result
chair,
of the
Tom Solon
reorganization.
is the vice chair, and Beth Williams, our new member, is the secretary.
Okay, great. And
We like to leave that for,
We do the same
it's a
thing.
special position.
Tag, you're it.
The gauntlet
And as I mentioned,
for the
Cindy,
newcomers, right?
Cindy will join us moving forward. Oh, you know what? I jumped, all right, we'll go back to, I skipped over one agenda item, so I'll move that to later in the meeting. Were there any other items at your school board meeting that, I don't know if you concentrated mostly on the reorg, I think there were some policy items and things
there
like that.
was a lot of
but-
policy, the reorg, and pass the teachers'
Nominations and things like
nominations.
that. Okay. Great. Was there any change to your meeting date?
No,
So you're still third Wednesdays?
third Wednesday.
Okay.
We didn't discuss it to change it, so I'm assuming
Okay.
that.
Moving it. Okay, great. Any other items or questions?
Oh,
for-
sorry.
Okay.
We are going to start a curriculum best policies, or continue it and get back to having a curriculum best policies committee.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Has it been a few years since you
It's
had
been
that?
a few years since
Okay.
we've
Would that address things potentially like class sizes and things
class
like that?
size, scheduling.
Oh, kind of like reevaluate if what we have is.
Right,
what
it
we
include
really
the
need.
middle school and the high school, the whole
Oh, great.
co-op. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, good. Look forward to hearing those updates. Any other items for Krista? Okay, next item is a legislative update. There were so many legislative bills this year. I'm not sure if it was really more than any other year, but it seemed like an awful lot. And a lot of things that have educational aspects from a financial perspective, as well as just from operational kinds of issues. But some of the major ones that have passed or are in progress, I wanted to just kind of let everybody know where the status is. So there was a bill put forward, I apologize for not knowing all of the bill numbers, that would have changed the apportionment formula for cooperative school districts to 100% EV. So right now, there's the RSA is written so that you can have the 50% ADM, 50% EV formula. You can have one voted on within the district, or it would be 100% EV. Those are the three options. This bill would have stricken two of those options and made 100% EV as the only apportionment formula for cooperative districts. It's the second year it's been brought forward and struck down. So.
Was the vote closed? Do we know?
It didn't even make it to a vote. So when I say struck down, like in committee, it didn't even go forward to be
Well.
brought to the legislature.
I mean,
Is that-
technically, every bill does go to the full
Oh,
legislature.
it went with a
Um,
recommendation to
yeah.
non-support. I could
Yeah.
probably, I could.
It
look
might
at-
have been, it might have been on the consent calendar.
Oh, so they,
So at the beginning of each session, bills that are generally considered to be non-controversial, they're either definitely going to pass, they're definitely going to be killed. They'll go on the consent calendar. The House takes, or the Senate takes one vote to accept all of the recommendations
Okay.
for all of those. So that might
That's-
or might not have been the case
Right,
in
and
this.
This is
I
like
can-
bundling, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, we're all in agreement, this is what should happen to these bills.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
we move on to the others that are more
Okay,
controversial.
I could do a little bit more research and see if that's
Yeah.
what it was, what it was
Yeah.
on, or what the vote was, so. Or unless anyone wants to take legislative updates as a little side project that bring forward those updates on a monthly basis, that would be great. So everyone can think about that. There is a bill wending its way through. I sent a note to Jim Belanger, who is one of the sponsors, along with Kat McGee, Michelle St. John, and several other members that changes some of the language in the RSA that stipulates right now that an apportionment formula needs to be changed every 5 years. So the language that's being brought forward is basically says that a vote to maintain an existing formula is an action that will allows the formula to, and it passes, will allow that formula to stay to 5 years. So the formula doesn't need to change. The action of the legislative body to maintain the formula is a legitimate action that would keep it in place for the next 5 years. I think it's House Bill 149. I'll get you the number, Matt. I just, and I checked with Jim Belanger. It was up for a vote or another hearing. It's kind of wending its way through the process. There was a hearing scheduled for March 26th, and he has not received a notification of when it's going to be voted on, nor did he give me an indication of which way he thought it was leaning. So we'll continue to kind of watch that one. There was just a quick note that went out that said there was some approval to the change in, there were several bills that address adequacy aid, changes to stabilization grants and things like that. There are anticipated to be changes to aid and grants because of something that now allows more revenue to be added to the formula and whatnot. So I would anticipate some of those adjustments, hopefully helping the district, especially if it has to do with stabilization grants, because right now Brookline loses 4% annually in its stabilization grant for the next 20, what are we down to, 19 or 20 years, 20, 21 years. So again, still working. There'll be probably some change to the formula. I don't know if it would impact FY19's, FY20's numbers. Just kind of wait and see how that fleshes itself out. As will a 1.5% COLA adjustment for certain NHRS employees, retirees. So I don't know how this, Kelly, I'm sure will figure out how this affects the district, because the NHRS sets its rates in 2-year increments, and they're anticipating this to change for 2020. They're in the middle of a 2-year of rates that have already been set for 2 years. So I don't know if they're just going to pay it out and then put it into the next rate cycle, which is probably what would happen, which would mean we get through, wait, we just are changing it for FY20 and 21. It would be the next cycle. So there'll be some adjustment to the rates for a COLA change for certain retirees, not all retirees. And those were the latest updates I had. There's more, but I think those were really the kind of biggest ones, looking at anything related to apportionment, anything related to aid, and then the change to NHRS. So.
Yeah, and Brookline, for our June meeting, we've invited the reps, all our reps, to come talk to us about all these changes.
Oh.
You know, because we have all these types of stuff, but there's also bills out there like changing teachers' tenure from 5 years to 3 years, and all sorts of other things like that going on. So we're going to try to get our reps involved and come and talk to us. I'm sure it won't be a monthly basis, but I think it's not going to be May, but it's going to be June. I think is what we're targeting right now.
We could add that to the list. Can give us an update after that. Okay. That'd be great.
Yep, okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda, we're moving right along, is a review of the FY20 budget process and meeting results. So I put together a little summary. In case with all these weeks we've had off and haven't been really thinking about the meeting, where we ended up. Just wanted to give everyone a little reminder of what's what. Get it? Okay. I'll send these to you, Matt, so that you can look into the minutes. Okay. Attach them to the minutes. So really quickly, just where we stand with the approved budget. We did not approve the STEM center, so that interest payment came off the total. We approved HESA. We approved the operating budget, which already included a San Bernard's HEA agreement. We approved the SAU budget, all of the trust funds, and a robotics article for $98,823, resulting in a total budget of $24,428,110, which is a 7.3% increase. Estimated tax impacts for the two towns are listed. Those are still obviously subject to change based on aid, final aid calculations and changes to the tax base and whatnot. But that's where we ended up at $24.4 million. I included a little summary of some of the tax rates. I shared this, I think, right after the meeting. All the meetings took place. And wanted to just give you kind of a little rate comparison, just to kind of visually see where the rates have how they've changed over the past couple of years. What do I have? 1, 2, and I have 3. The 3 on the right were the FY19 estimate, then the FY19 actual, and then the FY20 estimate. I just so that you could see what we were estimating for FY19, and as a result of the revaluation, the rates we actually have within current tax bills are lower than what we were anticipating. And then you see the increase that we're expecting kind of in a visual way as opposed to just looking at a percentage. And just for anyone who wants to understand the impact to a $400,000 house in Hollis, based on the tax estimates that we have, the total tax bill would increase by $776, which is a net 8.9% increase. $240 of that would be related to the co-op. And in Brookline, I think this is kind of interesting, that the co-op on a $400,000 house would add $536 to somebody's bill, but as a result of savings on the town side, the net effect to the tax bill would be $372. So there were significant savings on the town side that offset the impact of the co-op itself. And so for issues for the FY21 budget, I just wanted to kind of put in place where just the things we know. There's a lot of things to find out and ask questions about and study, but what we know for FY21 is that we have the 3rd year of a San Bernard's HEA agreement. Krista, where do we stand with HESA? Was it a 2 or 3 year contract? It was 3. So we'll have another year of the contract. Yes. It'll be probably about, I can add that. 80, okay, about $80,000 for HESA. We will be removing the one-time robotics cost of almost $99,000 right off the bat as we go into FY21 guidance.
That will be replaced by an increase of about $250,000.
Well, whatever, but that one is coming right off the top. We can have a conversation about that. Potentially the COLA adjustment to NHRS. We'll have capital improvement items. There'll be a GMR change, benefit census issues, potential changes to additional aid and stabilization and apportionment. We'll be addressing for the FY21 budget, because this year for FY20 represents the last year of the formula of the 5-year requirement. School board is in charge of making a determination on kind of how to proceed. As a budget committee, we can certainly make a recommendation certainly make a recommendation and have a conversation on another day, and I will just leave it at that. So that is a result of kind of where we ended up. I'd love to get feedback on how everyone felt the process went this year, kind of the good, the bad, potential changes, and just kind of have a kind of discussion, because we never really regrouped after that March meeting. Anyone can feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, usually when I jump in first, it doesn't go well, but so I seem not to be able to hold back. I thought, first of all, that the school board made very nice presentations, and that you made very cogent and clear presentations as well. So I was very happy with the way the officials conducted themselves. And unfortunately, we can't control what goes on in the audience, and it can take just a few people to disrupt things. So to the extent that the meeting was disruptive, I don't blame certainly the school board or the budget committee. I think it's beyond our control. There was one piece that I was very disappointed in, and that was the last-minute robotics piece. And I would like to talk about that. I don't know if now is the time to talk about it, but that was so far out of ordinary process. I have personally never been a part of anything quite like that, and I'm very upset about it. And as a member of the budget committee, I'd like to formulate a position and talk to the school board about whether or not that money should be spent. And I say that because the school board had, when they suddenly, somebody from the audience suddenly appropriated a space that the school board was using, and there was no conversations about how to integrate this space, a woodworking space, into a robotic space, and the two don't seem to fit. And then we just, out of the blue, because we were sort of sad that robotics hadn't gotten anything, throw $100,000 at them. I was just very upset over that. So I'll stop. If anybody else shares that opinion, I'd like the budget committee to formulate an opinion on that, because I don't think that money should be spent the way it was handled at the meeting. And I would certainly like to hear at some point what the school board feels about how this space was just appropriated from underneath their, you know.
I would have to say I agree with you 100%. I think, unfortunately, we've started our way down a slippery slope where anyone with 25 signatures can come forward and make a recommendation, and after we spend hours and hours, and I can't even accumulate how much time the business office, the board, the budget committee spend to evaluate over 700 lines of budget data for, I mean, you know the list of things that we look at, and to bypass an entire process, and as you said, kind of, you know, jump into a space at the school to the surprise of the school board and the superintendent, and for everyone in the I mean, I understand the legislative body, it's their meeting and they can vote this in, but it is really, I think, sent us down a slippery slope of, you know, almost anyone with 25 signatures can say, well, I want to have this, or I want to have that, or we should really, you know, put more into athletics, or you just pick any item. I mean, we painstakingly at the last budget committee meeting withdrew funding for a French teacher. We did not support another nurse. We did not support a facilities maintenance director. We don't have I think a larger technology focus and things like that. All of these things that we talk about, we decide, we, you know, apologize for that it can't be done. The schools make very, very difficult decisions throughout the process before it even comes to us. And then as a budget committee, we almost 100% of the time ask them to go back and make more cuts and more difficult decisions that affect the direct curriculum of students on a daily, of 1,200 students on a daily basis. And to leapfrog that process.
Yeah.
And it really is just, it's hard to.
Is there any legal recourse to
No, but
investigate and perhaps moving forward change the process?
The school board doesn't have to spend the money.
No.
First of all, and we could certainly, I'm not trying to suggest what the school board should do, but, and we could certainly offer an opinion that they shouldn't spend the money, given the lack of process, given all of the process we went through and the lack of process to get to that point. That was an unprecedented move. I have never seen that. I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, stuff like that 25 signature thing, that's one of the topics that we were planning to talk with our reps about. Because I think that's the best way that we can, you know, maybe affect change is to get our reps involved and try to work with them to come up with better ways for dealing with stuff.
Unfortunately, it
Well,
wouldn't get, it wouldn't,
wouldn't
change
help
that
us,
wouldn't help us
no.
for this next go-around, but it does, I agree with
We need
you.
to
I
get-
think
we need to get the
there's a
discussion
specific
started.
statute that
Yeah.
addresses citizens petitions and mandatory signatures and
Yeah.
things like that. And that's exactly, you're exactly right, Matt, that
So
that's.
the threshold should be higher,
Yeah.
you know,
it's-
some sort of higher threshold.
It's
so not-
2% or 25 signatures, whichever is lower. It doesn't make any stipulation for if you're part of a cooperative district. It doesn't say 25 signatures of each district or 2% of each district. It's just 2% of the legislative body, or 25, which,
Well, and I mean, as a school board, we get citizens petitions every single year. Some are pro-school. Well, I've got to say, not many are pro-school. Most of them are in an effort to put more restrictions on our ability to conduct business. But, so, I understand everyone's frustration about the process, but those 25 signatures are part of the process. The original one was not supported by the board. So this is difficult because this wasn't a board, there was no board vote taken, no board opinion given. And the warrant, the way it reads, is to put that money towards the robotics. The plan at this point, with that money, we walked through the area during our school board meeting. Right now, robotics has one of the old science rooms. The plan is to put a science back into that science room, and use some of that money to put that back into a science room.
Put
And-
what back into a science room?
Where the robotics is right now, where they are
okay,
housed.
all right.
And then and that's on one side. So the two science rooms will be right next to one another. So it actually makes sense to put the two science rooms next to one another. There'll be a door in between.
At the middle school.
At the middle school, down
so
here.
you're saying part of the 98,000?
Yes, will be to refurbish that and make
And that
that.
can legally be done?
It's
Because
part,
you're not.
as far as we know.
Okay, because you're not refurbishing, you're not making a robotic space, you're
Well, because then-
correcting the
Right,
previous
and then
one.
they're
Damage
going
done
to
by the
move
robotics.
into
Not
the,
damage, just reorienting it.
the current science room,
Yeah,
which is right next to the room where the wood shop is. The wood shop classroom will still be used as the wood shop classroom, and the wood shop area, part of it will be used for the robotics area, and part of it will be still used only for classroom type, and some of the machines will be used by both. But that one science room will be used for robotics, just like the science room is now. So they will have one room that is used for them.
So is there any summary document that specifies how the 98 and change is going to be spent?
Not the actual dollar amounts, just how they were rerouting, because part of a wall is going to be taken out, so a garage door, so we
So
can
that-
have access to that.
So that number was arrived at by estimating what it would take.
I
to
don't
do
know
those
how the
things.
number was arrived. I don't know.
okay.
Thin
so-
air, I believe.
So at this point, I mean, okay.
I
you
don't
can
know.
continue
So,
to have the
so
discussion.
that's, the board at this point feels that we've been told by the legislative body that we need to move forward with this, and at this point, that is where we are moving forward. But it is also enhancing, or being put forward for regular education and for our science department, the science area.
And what about the larger robotics question? Is this the answer to the robotics question? We all done now?
Well, I mean, Andy has said that, we can give them space for as long as we can give them space. But if our numbers move up and we need that space is our space. It becomes the school again. So there's no promise that they are going to be in there forever, but at this point, it will give them, they feel that it gives them the opportunity to work with their robot and not have to move it around and displace it all the
But I
time.
mean, we were going down a road, and the road was to get robotics into the high school, and there was, it was a road we were going down, and suddenly we're over here. And so is this piece now taking the place of the road we were going down?
Not for the STEM, no, not for STEM. It might keep robotics at this point satisfied, but no, they're still continuing
So
to
the school board,
discuss.
there's going to be more discussion about that road we were going down, the STEM road.
Yes, yes,
Okay. Well, at least that's good.
yes.
Just to clarify things, I mean, I'm used to a process, for example, when I submit proposals for technical work, and they accept it, then I have to write what I call a terms of reference, which specifies exactly what I'm going to do with the amount of money to be spent, and specifically answer the questions that need to be answered, et cetera, and how I'm going about doing and how long it would take to do this, the job. Is there anything similar to this? In other words, given that the voters have approved spending $98,000 for robotics, is there any documentation to track exactly what's going to be used for that money and what's expected by when, and so on and so forth? So at least there is some clarity by anybody who agrees or disagrees with this
I would
particular
expect
task.
that to be, I mean.
Right, no,
yeah.
yeah, I think we're too early in that process.
Oh, okay.
That would be
school
the
board-
plan.
Yeah, the school board just looked at what we had to work with.
Right.
And discussed some of the ideas that there are on the table for that.
We
but
haven't
There's not been
voted
no-
on anything, we haven't.
Yeah, no dissection of that number. I think the robotics team might have an idea of how to spend that number, but it's in the school board's hands, not the robotics team.
Right. I mean, I understand everyone's concern, because yes, it was left out of the school board's, school board's hand, the budget committee's hand. It was just kind of, it's a difficult situation. And I think we are all trying to make the best of it and put it to best use for everyone. But nothing has been formally decided. It's been,
I believe you head in that direction. It's not up to them taking 90,000, going to the wood shop and change a blade from the woodworker to the
Absolutely not.
metal guys. and
No.
that. So that's
No,
what I'm saying, it's-
I'm certain that
Yeah.
nothing will be decided until the school board fully vets this to include hiring the proper, like an architect or, whoever can help us with making sure we are going to meet codes and all of the proper things that need to be done.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm glad that you guys are in there.
Yeah, right.
But just like Tom, I'm concerned with moving forward, we need to make sure that the process is, whatever process is eventually.
Process was followed, though, and that's
Yeah.
one of the things that's irking me here a bit. Because, so we had a citizen petition to spend some money on something, and it's their right to do that. But when this was presented, I did not hear a lot from either the school board or the budget committee opposing it, or telling people, hey, this really isn't ready for prime time yet. We haven't had a chance to study this. We there was no pushback from either board that I remember in any particular effect, pushing back to try to tell people, give us another year to look at this, or, this just isn't ready for us right now. And I don't think the people necessarily heard the other side of that. They just heard the advocates saying this would be a good thing and they want to support the robotics, and that makes perfect sense to me. But I think there was some responsibility on our part to be a little bit more vocal in suggesting that probably that bill article should have been defeated. Secondly, I'm going to agree with the school board, or what appears to be the school board position, which is that, even though this wasn't proposed by us and we weren't prepared for it at the time, nevertheless, it is the direction that was given to the school board by the voters. And I think that the school board does have a responsibility to make a legitimate attempt to try to address the issue with the funds that were allocated. And the article only authorizes them to do so.
If I just might, it was not an article, it was a petition, and there's a big
It's a
difference.
petition warrant article.
Now,
It's a petitioned warrant article. But the point of it is that it authorized the school board, and in my opinion, the school board has an obligation to make a legitimate attempt at doing so. But if it can't reasonably be done, and it can't reasonably be done within the budget, I don't think there's an obligation to go through with it. But I do think there's an obligation to try, and it sounds like the school board is definitely doing that.
I'm just going to jump in with, I'm still stuck in in the process issues. And I ultimately, at the end of the day, when we finish that meeting, one of the things we kind of say or address all the time is that we approve it as a bottom line budget, and it can be spent the way it needs to be spent, or not spent in a certain way. And I think I'm in the and not spent a certain way, because I think we feel very good about a bottom line budget because it's been vetted and gone through a process, and we understand the drivers to it when we bring it forward. And maybe you're right, Brian, and we do bear some responsibility as the budget committee for not jumping up and saying you can't do this. But I think what I feel like I'm limited by is, at that point, the role we have is that we get to answer questions. And so, yes, could we have gone to the microphone? Yeah, we could have. But we're also caught up in what is happening and what's being said and things like that, that all of a sudden you're listening, you're like shaking your head and doing all these things, and then someone asks to poll the committees, but then somehow it doesn't happen and things like that. And then it gets moved and you're like, should have gone to the microphone and made a statement, because we are admonished by the moderator that we just can't stand up in the front of the room and jump up and say, as a budget committee. Now, maybe in this case we could have, because it was just so out of process that but I don't know, I just feel like I'm so trained to be like, they're not asking me a question, and I can't just say.
Now, let me ask you this, was there any advance notice that they were gonna present this? or
No.
it was just
No.
done on the floor?
No, that's my point. I
So
totally agree with Darlene. How the heck were we supposed to respond to this? We supposed to say, all right, everybody go out for chips for half an hour while the budget committee discusses this and takes a position on it? We didn't have that opportunity.
That's
So-
true. Any comment made at the microphone would have been an individual comment.
So
Yeah.
the fact that it was sprung on everybody, it suggests to me that because it didn't go through the vetting and validating process of getting the committees involved, it shouldn't, by
So-
default, shouldn't be accepted.
We had a actually very similar situation happen in Brookline at the town meeting. We had a year or two ago, something like that, where we had a petition warrant article to come up and spend money on a particular project, and it had not gone through the usual process for doing that. So we just stood up but we knew about it in advance, though. It wasn't sprung, at the last minute. But we stood up to the voters and we said, this really has not gone through the process. It's not ready for prime time yet. Give us another year to do this. And they changed it to be a study committee instead of actually going through with it, which made a lot of sense. I still think that we could have and should have, and I almost did but didn't. So I have total responsibility for this too, to get up there and to tell the voters, like, hey, we haven't seen this before. We don't know how realistic this is. We don't know if this is really the right thing to do.
And, even for that reason, I would.
This isn't good
like,
timing.
Part of my recommendation for not spending would to be,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's go vet it and put it into the next budget process.
Yes. Yep.
And put it into the FY21 budget.
Mm-hmm.
And make it go through the hoops and
Yep.
everything else and the prioritization. Because I understand, the legislative body said this, but if it had gone through the prioritization process that we direct our superintendent and his administration to go through, I'm not sure it would have risen to the top. And my fear is, after approving $98,000 this year, if maybe it, not as much goes to robotics because a lot of it needs to go to renovation, maybe next year they ask for another $98,000. And you see, we're down this slippery slope. And believe me, if that were to happen, you'll see, I think, 7 budget committee members online to make a statement. But I just feel that
Absolutely, but I'm also concerned, about the concept that we would not do something that the voters have passed a warrant article for us to do just because it didn't go through us.
You think we hate
it? If it turns out not to make sense and it can't be realistic, that's one thing. But to just say we're not going to do it just because it didn't go through us.
That's why I think.
That's where I'm.
But that's why I think documentation on exactly what's to be done and what's gonna cost and all that, will help clarify whether or not there is risk, meaning we shouldn't go forward, or it's straightforward, it's under budget, whatever.
I think
And
it came
we
at
go
the end
through.
of the night where
Yeah.
the stem cell didn't get passed, so I was like, at least we get something, we need something to move on. And I think the school board's taken that in the right direction of finding the best way to spend that money and make it acceptable for science and robotics.
I can say that, as Tom said at the meeting, that we were not getting rid of the wood shop. And we have a number of candidates, and that's not the intent, to get rid
Right.
of that program.
But when they got up
Completely.
with the petition, it was like, oh, the guy retired, and then they were gonna use that room again. And I looked over at Andy, and he
Well,
was
that was
kinda
the
looking at you
assumption, and I
guys going
think
like,
Tom
what
was
the hell
trying
is
to
he
make
talking
it
about?
clear
You know,
that
so-
that was not the case.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So should we take a sense of the committee at the next meeting to take our position on this?
Why do we have to wait? Why do we have to wait?
School board's taking care of it.
Well, you can
Well,
take a sense of the
we can-
committee and relate it, because things are moving forward. So if you want to get information sooner rather than later would be
We
the
can
time
take a
to do
sense of the
that.
committee, we can take a motion that has us formulate a response that supports it, doesn't support it, requests that it not be spent in that manner. I mean, you can make motions and take senses of the board in various directions.
Yeah, but I think it's gonna be hard until we actually see numbers and know whether it's doable and know what the, I guess, what their criteria is. Like, you know, what was it, $98,000, but say it comes back in and it's 105, then what? You know, are we,
Again, I
is
can't speak
is
for the
whatever
board,
we
but I
limited, is that?
can't
Or how about it's
imagine there would
98,000,
be a
but
lot of
it really
support
only
for that.
costs 40?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not speaking for the
But
board.
going back to what Raul said, why can't we ask the school board to give us a document, say that we're very concerned with the lack of process, at least some of us are, on that, on how that came about, and would the school board please give us detail on how they intend to move forward, because the last time we heard the school board, they weren't going to close down the wood shop. So I was totally confused as to how this could possibly happen.
And this is another example where documentation and lesson learned can help us moving forward in terms of we need to change the process to on accepting or the request, or denying requests like this.
So I can make that request to the school board. I'm sure Krista will take it back, but I can directly contact Holly and make that specific request for May. And at that point, after hearing what the plan is, if we still, we can make a decision as a budget committee if we want to put forward an additional position that is in support or not in
Okay.
support. Okay.
We're not getting rid of the woodworking shop.
Huh?
We are not getting rid of the woodworking shop.
No, we're just gonna have robots with sawdust on them, but we can, we can buy dusters. and
Sell us in their
take care of that.
carburetors, huh?
Robots with saws.
We're doing good. How are we?
Okay, anything
Isn't
else?
that
about-
Actually, speaking of robotics, didn't our robotics team do very well?
They did, and they made it to Detroit. They are
Oh,
going to
wow.
nationals.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
when is
Nice.
that? Is that the end of May, beginning of May?
It's April vacation, I think,
Oh.
so it's coming up.
I
Imagine
think
if
all
they
these
had a space.
I think all these challenges are good for their character.
That's right. That's right. So they're
They
doing
make
very
it
well.
work extra hard.
Just want a little room, guys.
Anything else about the process, the presentations? I just want to put forward, since Lauren isn't here, one of the notes he sent to me included just a comment about potentially considering more members of the budget committee being involved during the presentation itself to encourage ownership of different parts and things like that. So I think it gets to kind of the next section of the agenda, which is focus areas and meeting topics. And I think one of the things I'm interested in is maybe evaluating or considering the components of the presentation before January. So really, like when we have time to be able to kind of, sit back and look at it and say, because we talk every year about making substantive changes or what's better information to share or not share. And I think just doing it in the midst of, all of the prep and still finalizing a budget just becomes more difficult. So maybe looking at it in advance is probably just kind of helps the process a little
I
bit.
have a better idea.
Okay,
We'll divide the presentations and then you answer all the questions.
there you go.
You're a super technical expert.
So that was just
We
a
can
comment
discuss.
that Lauren provided, and I wanted to share that. So.
I agree with him.
One of the things that also, another area is, we like to talk about focus areas. Usually in June, we hear about the update to the facility study. Sometimes if Andy hasn't been able to, he's sent a quick memo about some of the things that are anticipated for the FY21 budget cycle. And I would just like to ask if anyone has any specific focus areas that the budget committee would like to delve into a little bit more deeply. We will not have contracts to be negotiated, put them forward, but Tessa forward, but nothing is being negotiated. Transportation is not being negotiated. We're just got through that, and just kind of.
One topic that I keep thinking about is, it seems to me like the STEM and robotics, all those technical areas, should be establishing sponsorships, relationships with business, not necessarily locally, could be nationally.
They already have some
And
sponsorships.
I would like to hear more about that.
Okay, we can make a decision maybe a couple times a year to
For
invite them
example-
to come and kind of give us an overview.
I read a magazine called Aviation Week and Space Technology on a weekly basis. There are all kinds of opportunities with companies involved in space. There are startups in Boston and all over the country, AI related, machine learning, etc. I think not only could that inform in terms of identifying future requirements for staffing, but also maybe provide some capital to support projects. And so I would like to hear if there is a strategy like that, or if maybe they're thinking about it, or where are they? Because that could also help subsidize the cost needed to make improvements in facilities and other areas.
Okay,
So that's a topic that I would like to
okay.
hear more about, if there is anything like that.
I would like to do a couple walkthroughs of the building, just guided tour of the buildings, going through certain certain parts of the, like the kitchen areas and, some of the maintenance things
Okay,
and whatnot you don't
I'm
normally
smiling
do.
because I haven't done that in like 9 years. Really, I think
That's a
that was
great
one
idea.
of the
Yeah.
first things I did when I started with the budget committee.
Mhm.
I don't know if somebody sponsored it but yeah, that is a good idea. We can arrange that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I'd be happy to take you if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be great.
Were you able to hear it, or?
One of the things that came up at the Hollis Budget Committee was potentially getting the finance committees, the select boards together, kind of all sitting in one room and talking about what's going on, and kind of just, no official decisions being made or anything, but just kind of everybody kind of just having a conversation about where things are and where we think they're going. So Tom Gein and I said, I think the last time we did that, the things that came up weren't even on the radar or things we had talked about. So for what that's worth. But I think it helps, with regard to, we're having a turf field. Is the town still going to pursue recreational fields?
Yes.
Is the, things like that. But just having everyone kind of in the same place, hearing message, whether it's including select board, whether it's maybe just the finance and budget committees, kind of to align processes and have that discussion. That had come up a little bit. One of the things I also brought up, Kelly, I know you, Tom Gein, and I have met with you kind of to do the same thing after the meeting, to say, where are we? What do we think we need to change about the process, reports, timeframes, and things like that. We thought maybe it was a good idea to do that again. And one of the things that Tom Gein had mentioned was, we talk a lot about alignment and making sure we're providing similar information. And one of the things we talked about, and it's important for me in the presentation itself, is understanding like inflation-adjusted information, when we should be using it for trends, when we shouldn't be, and things like that, because trends and impacts are very different from nominal dollars versus inflation adjusted. And I think both are important, but I think there needs to be a consistent approach to how that's presented. So I think we'll have at least Tom and I, but the boards in general should have a discussion about that. And what do you feel is important of inflation adjusted trend information? If you don't feel that it's important, if you feel it's important from a tax rate perspective or whatever, just have a bigger conversation about that. Because it really does help to explain changes and differences over time to make those kind of inflation adjustments. I already use a model when I do present it that, I don't know, Tom has like 50 years of data in it, but it's the same information, so we're not using a different source. If he has a certain rate for a certain year from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's in one model, and we're using the same information. So similarly, Bryant, we can share that with you,
Great.
and if you're going to be presenting information from the Finance Committee, at least it's all the same inflation data. We're not using different sources and things like that, and kind of aligning sources and making sure we're all coming kind of from the
Great.
same place. So have the same formulas, understand what we're doing to calculate tax rates or
That'd be
what
very
happens to
handy.
bases. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
the
would be
all
great.
underlying data for each one of the components of the total tax rate should be the same, shouldn't
Yeah.
be different.
And I think we do a really good job of it.
Yes.
I really do. I mean, I do.
Unofficially.
Right, but I talked to Tad Putney on the Brookline side to understand how he anticipates the tax base changing. He's, I go to him for information related to the budgets and after the public hearings and things like that. So we do try to stay aligned. I gather information from Kristen Austin. She's the,
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
is she the tax? What is she?
She's
Anyway, someone who
Yes,
works in the town hall
yes.
with taxes and get information on the tax base and the home values and things like that. I don't know if we want to have the discussion on, a few years ago, I haven't updated it in a couple years, I did a random sampling of the Brookline tax base and came up with like the 15 homes and had, I think, 10 years worth of data. I haven't updated it. It's easy to do. It was a purely random sample. But again, Hollis does something similar to that. And while theirs goes back 25 years, again, I just think it helps kind of give people a frame of reference. So if we think that's important, if we don't, we can just kind of start, and if we do, start building it now, because there's no way in February I'd be able to put that together. So, just things like that.
That will keep us busy at least through the summer, right?
When we don't meet, by the way, and actually that goes back to if no one has anything else, we do not usually meet in July. If we keep the meeting as the fourth Thursday of the month, that means we're really not starting over the summer up until that last week of August, so we would essentially have the summer off from a budget committee perspective. I skipped this part of the agenda, but from a guidelines and logistics standpoint, does fourth Thursday still work for people? 6:30 to 8:30, we try really hard to keep it to 2 hours or less, or more sometimes, but if that still works for people, we can do that. If the school board potentially changes or goes a week earlier.
I
we
don't
might do the
anticipate
meeting. Okay, and you're still when?
We're still Wednesdays right now.
Fourth Wednesday? Oh, so does that work for you to have 2 nights in a row?
At least I get it over with.
Okay. Well, let us know.
So,
That's the attitude.
yes. No, I think it's gonna be easier having it all the same week.
Okay.
Just because if there's gonna be a disruption, I'd rather have it 1 week versus
Okay,
multiple weeks.
okay. So I don't know if anyone has anything else they'd want to add or change to logistics or kind of how we do business. Be happy to hear it.
Maybe one of those, the mini offsite you were suggesting, maybe that should be like a little barbecue sometime in the summer.
Oh, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's probably a good time to, I know we all got together and we had a big NHRS overview a while ago.
Yeah.
I did ask them if they could do that again and they would charge us. So I said, okay. maybe we can gather enough information from the NHRS website and not do that. We're not invite, I mean, Barbara Reed was great, but she said that now I guess so many people were asking for it, it became a big time issue for them. They charge for that now, so. But, okay, if anything else comes up, if people, have a burning desire to hear about something, we will add it to the list and move forward. Great. And with that, at 7:52, I would take,
Oh, are we finished with the meeting?
If, no.
Process observer.
Well,
Process of
Process of
Sorry.
service says everything went well. I
Okay,
like
wait,
the
it looks like Tom has something else, too.
yes, your colleagues, we wanted to speak to you.
Okay.
Your colleagues are extremely appreciative of the work that you have done as chair. It's way above and beyond normalcy. I mean, you're so good at this that some of us feel like we're not doing enough to support you. But in any event, we wanted to offer a token of our appreciation. This is from all of us.
Oh, that is so kind.
McDonald's Happy Meal.
And just thank you for the all the really hard work that you do, and the thoroughness, the intellectual acuity that you bring to the job.
I really appreciate that. That is so, so kind. And okay, I won't get weepy. But I will say, I just really, I really do love working with all of you. I think you all bring such a great, distinct, and unique perspective, and I truly, truly value it. I know I've begged people to stay and seek their seats again, and it really does come from the heart, because I really do appreciate everything everybody brings and the support you bring to me as well. So thank you so much. That's so nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, you may adjourn.
Okay, process observer.
I think we're done. I mean, we've done a great job. I love the conversation tonight, and we made some good progress, and we discussed some good issues.
And our next meeting will be on Thursday, the 23rd. It happens to be a 5-week month, so that'll be on the 23rd.
May 23rd. Excellent.
Okay,
And I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
great, that's 7:54.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, you guys are so nice.